Okay, excuse the wet hair. I mentioned a while back that we live in a land trust house, and someone said, well, what's a land trust? I have a long video on this subject on my YouTube channel from a few years ago, but I want to take a few seconds here and explain what land trusts are and why it is the only reason we were able to afford a home in Portland, Oregon. So there's all kinds of land trusts, residential land trusts, agricultural land trusts, in which a nonprofit owns the land. And an individual or household, or sometimes a small business, has a usually 99-year lease on that land. Here's what that looked like for us. We own our house and the land trust owns the land. This means that when we went to buy our house, the land trust contributed the approximate value of the price of the land of the lot toward our mortgage, and we contributed the rest. So our mortgage was only for the value of the house. Well, a little bit less than. The land trust kicked in about $20,000 less than what the value of the land was. But they were like, this is our portion, and this is what we'll give you in exchange for having rights to the land. That land is now entered into a trust managed by a nonprofit, and we have a 99-year lease on the land. Land trust houses make housing more affordable so that income qualified home buyers can buy into the housing market for $70,000, $90,000 or more below market value. Right, so this means instead of, I'll just make up a number here, instead of a $200,000 mortgage, we would have had a $120,000, $110,000 mortgage. We then have to lease the land back from the land trust every month. Land trust lease fees are usually like $40 to $60 a month. And this is our home for all intents and purposes. When we go to sell our home, we can only sell it back to an income qualified buyer that the land trust approves of, so that another low income family can afford to buy a house in Portland. The land trust also ensures that our home will remain a single family home, just like agricultural land trusts ensure that the land will remain farmland. Neither can be developed into high density housing. Neither can be purchased and utilized by house flippers. So it preserves that agricultural land or that house or that condo at a lower price point so that low income families and individuals can afford to buy a home. Now, you don't really build a lot of equity. There's a complicated resale formula, right? So normally if I buy a house for $200,000, it appreciates in value. I turn around and sell it for $500,000. I just made $300,000 profit. With the land trust, I'm only going to see about 25% of the increase in value of the house, of the equity of the house, should I sell my home. The majority of the equity basically goes back to the land trust. And they actually take their share and basically reduce the sale price of the home. The goal of that is to keep housing prices low. It does mean that we can never afford to sell our house because the market around us has increased so much that we couldn't buy into another house if we only realized 25% of the equity when we go to sell. We're basically stuck in our house forever. So land trusts come with ups and downs. While everybody else is building tons of wealth in their house, we're not. But also, we are now in a home that we can do with what we want. We have been sheltered, protected from the rapidly rising cost of rent in Portland by being in a home for 15 plus years with a fixed mortgage. If I were to rent my home now at market value, I would be spending between $2,000 and $2,500 more a month than what my mortgage payment is. There are some other things, like if I want to put an addition on the house or make any capital improvements, I have to get the land trust's approval, which is actually not that difficult. They're happy to have you improve the home. The problem is, though, if I invest in like remodeling the bathroom, again, I am only going to see 25% of the money I put into the house come back out of it. So I only want to make improvements that I want to use and enjoy. The land trust also owns all the mineral rights and things like that to the land. We do have decreased property taxes because of the partnership with the land trust. And my heirs have the option to renew the lease for another 99 years and their heirs on and on. So this home could be my children's home forever. The land trust won't kick them out. I have to have this as my primary residence. I cannot turn it into a rental. I could own other properties as rental properties as long as the land trust home is maintained as my primary residence. So basically, we didn't plan on buying a land trust house. We were doing an IDA, which is an individual, basically like individual development account. It's a special savings account toward a down payment on a house. Through my husband's work, he worked at NAYA, that's the Native American Youth and Family Association. and they have a wonderful housing center, a great resource. And they came to us and were like, hey, we know you're saving. You have this 3-year plan to try and save up for a down payment on a house. But there actually is a land trust grant that has become available, and the first family fell through, and y'all have really good credit. Do you want to buy a house in the next 3 months? So we went through this whirlwind. We were not ready to buy a house. We didn't think we were going to be able to afford it. But this was just like a huge windfall. And we said, okay, sure, we'll go for it. We had to find a house that met specific requirements. It had to be in a specific part of Portland. It couldn't have things like an oil tank on the property. It couldn't be on septic. And we had to close quickly or the grant was going to expire. I think at the time that we bought our house, again, 15 years ago, I didn't fully understand the financial ramifications because it was very quickly done and the resale formula is really complicated. And I thought, well, we'll never want to sell our house. We're going to live here forever. As an Air Force brat, I wanted to buy one home and never move again. I hated moving around a lot as a kid. And prior to us buying our home, we had been in 9 rentals in 8 years. I didn't want to move anymore. So I didn't really think about the way that the market would continue to increase and our home was somewhere we could live, but we can't really build equity here. For us, a land trust was the right choice. We saw rent going up and we were actually contemplating maybe moving back to Missouri in order to have a lower cost of living because we had a huge stack of medical and dental bills for one of our kids, and we could not afford an increasing rent and to pay off those bills. We were struggling. We qualified for food stamps at the time. My kids were on WIC at the time. And we were presented with this option of like, hey, you could own your own home and your mortgage will be hundreds of dollars less than your rent. So we went for it. I think land trusts are a wonderful option to keep agricultural land affordable, to keep housing affordable in expensive cities. It's not a perfect solution and there are costs and benefits. But I hope that explained a little bit about what a land trust house is and why we have one.